Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Veteran Lifestyle Magazine podcast. I'm your host, Annette Wittenberger, and alongside me is my co-host, Joe Palacios. And today I have the absolute honor of sitting down with someone whose story embodies grit, resilience, and transformation. Chris Kruger is a retired Army veteran whose career spanned over 22 years, from infantryman to Blackhawk maintenance test pilot. He's a combat veteran, a decorated soldier, and now a writer, speaker, and soon-to-be podcaster who's using his story to help others find strength, healing, and faith. Chris, welcome to the show. It's an absolute honor to have you here with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Love being able to get out here and share some more of the story and just get word out there that a lot of people in the military have backgrounds that they want to share and tell the world about.
No, I love it so much.
I do want to say one thing, because in your thing we talk about how you infantry and then you progressed. What I think people forget, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, because I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me though. Infantrymen always get the best opportunities to do things. Like, I think I really do. You go into the infantry initially, and that's cool. And everybody goes, "Oh, you're just infantry," but you do so many different things in the infantry. But then after that, like, there's just so many other opportunities that open up for infantry guys that they look forward to. So congratulations on you, and look forward to hearing your story.
Thanks. Yeah, and that's true. Just there kind of can be a stigma that's like, oh, you're just infantry, but it gives you a good base to branch out to as well. If you come in the military, army, whatever branch, and you're intel, you're kind of locked in for the duration of it. But with infantry, you can go like, hey, I'm having fun, this is good, which is kind of what I did. And then you go, I'm getting a little tired of it. Can I try something else? Now, most everybody, within physical restrictions aside, can go aviation as a warrant officer, even from other branches, into Army aviation if they want to. But yeah, just being on the ground and working with aviation assets deployed regularly, I was like, that's something I want to do. That looks like a lot of fun. And it had its ups and downs, pun intended. There just came a point where it was like, okay, now it's time to do something else now too.
So
I relate to that ups and downs with the helicopter.
Yeah.
Chris, your military career is so unique that you transitioned from an infantryman, boots on ground, to flying above as a Blackhawk maintenance test pilot. So I'm curious, how did that shift in perspective from the ground to the air reshape how you approached leadership, decision-making, and even life after the military?
Pertaining to leadership, it went from infantry and alerts unit, either running with a 6-man team and trying to make them the best team that I could, to being a platoon sergeant in Iraq on my final deployment in 2007, 2008. It was a 15-month deployment. About midway through, I had a conversation with the company commander and first sergeant. I was like, I'm tired of being a team leader. It's time for my assistant team leader to step up, kind of do that thing. And, I'm ready for the next phase. And they said, well, cool. We want you to be a platoon sergeant. And I was a staff sergeant at the time, nowhere near promotion. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I just kind of wanted to, hang out for the rest of the deployment. We were about halfway through at that point. Like I said, 15 months. And they said, well, we want you and your buddy, Derek, to run the platoon. And he was a staff sergeant as well. I can't give away too many details because this is in my book. So, I don't want to throw out too many spoilers, but we ended up taking over the platoon, having a great time doing it. And so the leadership was leading other people, trying to lead them to be the best, that they could be, while improving myself as well. Aviation was different because you're primarily leading yourself. You're trying to get better at flying, learn anything you can in the books, any aviation manual, and there's plenty of them. Then once I branched out into maintenance, there's hundreds more books to dive into and learn stuff on, and that you know, the most knowledgeable person in aviation would even tell you like, oh, I just know a fraction, you know, and it's just ridiculous how much information is out there. So you're always trying to better yourself, and you are trying to work as a group and a team, of course, to accomplish a mission and all that stuff, but you're also looking at promotion. So there's competition with you and those people that you are peers with, or that you got to you know, cohort group that went from I forget the term they used before that, but your cohorts. So you are, you know, you're in competition with them for promotion and things. So yeah, you want to look at the group, but you also kind of want to like, oh, look at me, look what I've done a little bit to, you know, separate yourself from them. Which is something I could just never get on board with. And in infantry, we, you know, called it spotlight ranger, like look at me. And I could never do that, you know. So the bigger thing that I took away from aviation, and I'm pretty sure anyone I worked with would do this, aside from being, you know, Kruger was angry all the time, because grumpy maintenance test pilot is kind of a common theme. But a lot of them would say, you know, like, I didn't take credit for the work, you know, the work. If a helicopter was up and flying in quicker time, I'd be like, yeah, I couldn't have done it without these guys over here. So I always gave that credit to where it deserved, without trying to take it all myself and, you know, put it on me. So that was the bigger portion of leadership change from infantry, constantly team building, constantly, you know, trying to better everybody else, to it had to be a little more self-focused in aviation, to one, make sure we got promoted, but at the same time, a lot of leaders learn that, you know, if you take care of your people, they'll take care of you, and that'll bring you on up in the promotion realm too. So I just kind of tried to do that without looking at myself so much, and be focused on the look at me. And as far as um, no, I'm sorry, that was I was trying to take a glance at my bullet points I had here to make sure I didn't miss anything. But yeah, I mean, that kind of sums up the differences in leadership, you know, between the two.
Well, I didn't know if you want to go there. I was
Go ahead.
no, I was relating to what you were saying about the spotlight ranger.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think in the way you summed up how, and I think this is a big leadership thing that we've learned, and some people see it in the military quite a bit, where people confuse the idea of following orders with leadership.
Mhm.
And then I like how you identified the actual team. Who said it, but it's probably one of the philosophers. The idea of leadership is that the task should be done, and no one should really kind of be like, "Oh, look what he did." It's like, "Look what we did." Right? Like
Right.
the leader is the one that's able to internally get the group to align and move forward on a larger mission, and feel like they've all accomplished it. And I think that's kind of like how you identify at the end of your story about leadership. Oh, this helicopter's flying. I'm just flying it. These guys are the ones that keep it in the air. So that's kind of
Well, and with that too, you know, when I look back over 22 years, I had 18 or so company commanders from infantry to aviation. And those best first line leaders I had, yes, we know mission is first. You're joining the military. Mission's first, always. But the ones that kept morale up there as the closest second, keep everybody's morale up, keep everybody's spirits up, you know, hey, what's working, what's not. Take the advice of people. Don't just force your own way. Those are the ones, the handful, the four, maybe five out of those, you know, 18 to 20 that I had in the mix there, that I'll never forget. And I tried to, because I tried to emulate them as much as I could, while taking all those, you know, we learned just as much from good leadership as bad leadership, because you're like, I'm not going to do that, I'm definitely not going to do what this guy does or that person does. How about that? Because just the way it made you feel, the things you had to do, the extra, it just felt like that extra weight, So if I could take the weight off someone's shoulders, by just trying to boost them around a little bit, then I would do that too. And there's wins and losses, success and fails with that, throughout the years, of course. Nobody gets it right 100% of the time, but yeah, those are the things that we just tried to do to make sure that everybody kept going to accomplish a mission. And it's just so much more beneficial when we put that morale up there at the top. Absolutely.
I love how you talked about your company commanders, because I was a company commander in 2005 to 2007, and it's rare for I was a chemical officer, so it was rare for us to get company command time. So I was just ecstatic. I interviewed for it, I got it, and then we deployed to Iraq. And so here I am trying to figure out how the heck I'm going to do this, bring all my people there, bring them back, of course. But one of the things that I learned quickly was to trust my NCOs. I loved my NCOs. And I've met, other officers who they don't act the same way. We all act differently, right? So I learned from them, because I was like, I'm not going to do that. I need to trust my supply sergeant. Saved me. He saved me. And then I had cooks. I had cooks in my company. And so once a month, I would try to, in Iraq, I would set up our talk area, my office area, and I would just have them bring in food and we would just hang out, just so we didn't have to think about the next convoy that was going to happen that night. Just so we don't have to think about mortar rounds. I just wanted to kind of pretend that we were just here and didn't have to think about everything else. But it was so important to me. It might sound cheesy. Maybe I was like mom, but I just felt it was so important, not just for me, because I was away from my 3 and 5-year-old, but for these young kids, 19, 20, and older, to just have a safe space and a scary place, for all of us. It was my first time deploying, and it was more for other guys. So I was just like, how are we going to make this okay for us? And so it was important for me for morale, for sure.
Well, sorry, Chris. I was gonna go ahead, because I have a question for you about it.
Okay, I was gonna say that's a perfect way to break down those barriers too. Yes, there's always rank, there's always structure. You're in the military, you can, as I'd like to say, you can turn on and off the switch. I know, I knew when I could call my company commander by like a nickname. With me and my buddies around, because we were all HALO jumpers too. So, we were hanging around. It was like, just because it doesn't matter. We called him Uncle I, right? And then when we were out around, it was Sir, it was all that, so no big deal. And he loved it. And we used to do, was it the class 4 draws, I think, where you could just get on deployments, you could get like steaks and burgers and all that other kind of junk. And none of it was great. But, when you're cooking it up together as the group, we did that on the regular. And so everyone's out there chatting, and he was there, not above everybody, but just amongst the people, as it were. And it broke down those barriers. Also, when you're leaning on those NCOs and you're leaning on those people with experience, it goes so much further, because then, I had a platoon leader on that deployment who did not lean on all of our experience. And it was my 3rd time in that area, with 2 12-month deployment prior. And he would just listen to what the other officers were telling him, and not listen to the NCOs with the experience. And again, it just made it so much more difficult, so much more painful to just go through those things. And that's when I was like, I'm done. I'm done in this position. I can't do it anymore. I need something else. And I was, again, just like, instead of just not challenging me at all and be like, okay, yeah, you can come here and work in the S3 shop and help plan operations, which he did offer as a threat, though. Like, you're just going to be sitting here doing that. He's like, or you can take a platoon and keep going out there and doing good stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. let's do that. It was, I was like, I was trying to not go out, but let's keep going. And then, again, in my book, there's a lot of stories of that being out there. We had a lot of fun, a lot of, mental struggles to, push through all that stuff too. But I just took what I saw from them and was like, let's make it the most fun as possible. And if you want those details, you have to read my book. So I'll leave that one at that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Joey,
little teaser to, give a little something, but pull you back in, gotta keep people interested. So
I know, I want to know. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to bring it back to even that leadership still. And how do you utilize some of those ideas now? Like now that you're kind of, because now you're more of a solo team, kind of, which is I love the journey that you're on here. I think it's something that we really like to highlight on our podcast is all the artistic stuff and capabilities that veterans have. And I think that there's just it has something to do with people that are called to this service. Like I think in all service, like I think just people that were called to serve somehow have all these innate other skills of telling stories, expression, and it's really cool. So how do you apply some of those experiences to your storytelling now?
So now it's on a personal level, with my family. So instead of the soldiers out there, now I try to incorporate my family as much as I can in all the decision-making stuff that we do. So initially, when I started writing my book, it was just so I could have a story to pass down to my daughters. I don't know a whole lot of my mom and dad's background, because my dad has his side of the family just has this a lot of half brothers and sisters, and it's just this it's a spider web of a story. So to try and follow along, to try to remember any of it, and all that is a challenge. And my mom's a little bit, but not to that degree on my dad's side. So I want to make sure I had something accurate to hand down to my daughters. So it was like, oh, what did your dad do? I don't know. He was in the army for some years, and what did he do? So initially, I was just kind of chronicling, what I did.
Yeah.
And as I did that, it became this huge cathartic process. Just really sitting at the keyboard and some days just pounding it out, just remembering some of the stuff and being angry, being sad, being whatever, and having to walk away. So initially, like I said, I did that to hand it to my daughters as a story, which now they're not going to be able to read until they're 18, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I don't want them to read until we can have a straight up adult conversation about it. But
it's not bedtime stories, in other words.
No. There's some funny ones. If I could like redact it for them in the meantime, but they're 13 and 15, so they don't have long to wait. But but with that, then when I got to the end of it, Genevieve, my wife, she goes, well, don't just let it become something that's a file on a computer. And I thought, okay, so I'm incorporating her, and I'm like, okay, well, what can we do with that? So I next steps, I'm like, well, what do I need to do to get a book published? Because I had no idea. So I Google search like any normal person does now, which led me to a Quora thread which said edit, edit, edit. So I edited it 3 times before I thought I had something that was decent. And I said, well, I don't know how to get an editor. And that's when Jenny says, well, I know somebody, and contacted Annette, who led me to an editor. And then it was, which was just a process I was not expecting. I thought it was going to be, here's my manuscript, tell me what you think, edit it up, give it to me back, and I'll let you know if I like it. And it was not that. But I'll hold more details on that, because I know we got another question coming here that can cover a lot more of that too. But so then learning more about the social media aspect, kind of the advertising marketing aspect, and that's been with my wife. She is jumping into her podcast headlong, and she took the reins and is running with it. And so far, it's going well. It's gaining some momentum. So we're hoping to continue on. And now we're working side by side, trying to encourage each other in these processes. Hey, here's what I've learned. And it's honestly more her than me, because I'm still just behind the computer pumping this thing out, and she's learning all this other stuff. Like, you got to do this, you got to do that. And even some of it, I'm like, okay, hey, slow down. It's a little overwhelming, but that's how it's kind of applied in here. And then with my daughters, just being home, instead of like, let's go do this or let's go do that, like, what do you guys want to do today? And they're teenagers, so I get a whole lot of, oh, I don't know, not much, I just sit around, whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want to go do this? Like, oh yeah, let's go do that. Okay, so I try to incorporate them as much as I can, but they're teenagers, so I'm doing what I can.
I understand that, but my kids are 22 and 24, so rough.
Yeah.
So, Joe, do you have a question?
I have a 17-year-old, and he's already like itching to start asking questions. Like, can you really tell me real stories now, Dad? Like,
right.
And I have one that he's he wants to go to college, but he's definitely leaning. He's got a call to serve. I think I see he's at this. He wants to be of service. So, and I don't know how you guys feel, but I recognize the struggle of service, right? Like, especially in military service. Like, I recognize it. There's the struggle, there's sacrifice, there's stuff we're gonna deal with for the rest of our lifeline. But because I am a consumer of media, there was this movie. It was like a while ago. It's just a cheesy movie. It's called The Girl Next Door, and there's a guy in there, and he's telling he's like the protagonist. He's telling the hero of the movie. He's like, well, is the juice worth the squeeze? And I gotta say, man, the juice of service has definitely been worth the squeeze. Has the squeeze been hard? Yes, but it's definitely worth it. So thank you for your service, first of all. And one of the things I wrote as you were talking about is, and why I love that you're sharing your story, and we're going to learn more about it, is because I think those of us that are called to serve through military service or whatever, I think sometimes we forget to share the stories. We forget to share and to share them realistically, like the ups and the downs, because there are. But you know what? That's what life is, ups and downs. So thank you for sharing your story, and we so look forward to your book. So how do you do with the ups and downs, like of your story? Like, are you? Because I know you're wanting to make it more of a uplifting, but you still you let people feel like the realism of what happened, and how do you kind of do that, like, in your creative process?
So I just kind of at first it was like I didn't think this thing was going to be out there, right? So I was just kind of sharing, how I felt, just trying to, as I was writing about the experiences, the things I did, chronicling, if something moved me emotionally, I put it down as best I could to the keyboard. So that was kind of how that whole thing went, sharing it. And then also around that time that we were looking at, like, hey, I think we could make this thing a book. And the thought was that my struggles are not, they're mine, but they're not individual. Annette has had hers, and Joe, I know you've had yours, and they're not the only thing. And we're coming away from a generation that's, don't talk about it, bottle it up. We're seeing that doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. So my thought was that if my book could get out there and into the right hand of someone who was struggling like I was, to just move beyond, the struggle, maybe this would help encourage them that, one, you're not alone. Two, other people out there care and want to see you do well, especially, and I tried as best I could to bridge the gap between military and civilian, so that, yes, it's it says a soldier's memoir on the cover, but just because the experience is military doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to those in the civilian realm who are struggling similarly. So I I held back some in the fact that later I didn't dive into the details of my struggles. Early on, I dove onto the details of my struggles and how deep they were. But later I just went like, and here I am again, kind of thing, so that you already read some of the stuff I did, so you can recall that, oh, he's probably right back in the deep end of the pool, just yo-yoing back down in there. And how's it going to come back? So I definitely tried to create some anticipation that there was going to be a recovery as it was, but I wanted to articulate it most for those people who it may come across, and that's my hope, that's my prayer, is that it comes across the right people who need to hear it at the right time, to be like, okay, our situation, our circumstances are different, but we were struggling the same. And not so much that the light at the end of the tunnel, will get here, because the other thing I'm learning is once the light at the end of the tunnel gets here, there's another tunnel. You're just making your way to another tunnel, and I'm sure we're laughing, but we all know it's true, right? So it's also in preparation for that next tunnel. Like, okay, hey, I've dealt with the stuff in this tunnel. Let me not drag it into that next tunnel. Let me make the next tunnel a little bit better. And I really hate speaking in cliched analogies and things like that, but there you go. You got one out of me by accident. But the other part was too, right around that whole time that it was going to become a book, I saw the movie Born on the 4th of July, Tom Cruise back in the 80s. It was on Netflix or whatever it was on, and I was like, oh, let me check that out, because I remember my dad had watched it when I was younger. He's like, oh, this is too much for you. I was like, okay. And it wasn't a great movie by any means, but I was like, there's so many parallels in my story in the struggle from a Vietnam era guy's story and struggle. And it was based off of a real guy who went on and did, as far as I understand, I didn't do any research into him, did some great things in Congress, particularly toward making sure soldiers get their benefits and the VA and all that kind of stuff afterward. So after watching that, I was like, maybe this could be something. I was like, shoot, maybe my story could be, some movie like this, maybe a little bit better for newer, later. So, who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But that was, I know, a long-winded answer for your question, but that was, where I kind of came, was like, the bigger thing was that I know I'm not the only one going through it. And if I can encourage someone to, the title of my book is Walking Away from the Ledge. If I can encourage someone else to do that, literally, metaphorically, whatever it may be, then that's, where I was at, wanting to make sure it got out there. And then that goes back again with that whole, how do I apply it now in my life? My wife has been a big supporter of it, encouraging it, and just helping me try and get everything to the next steps and next phases. So yeah, that's where we're at with it.
That's really powerful. I understand you're telling your story so you can help other people, and that's so hard to do, because not everybody feels like they have a story to tell, and there's people who don't know how to tell it, and so you have made the steps to do it. But I want to go back for a little bit and talk about, you had mentioned the editing part. I just want people that are watching and listening to just understand the process. It's frustrating and difficult, but it's so worth it at the end. But yeah, can you just talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So initially, I wanted to have, I didn't even know it was called a manuscript. I just kept calling it my book. So I wanted to have what I learned was called my manuscript, my rough manuscript, finished by New Year 24. Yeah. I finished January 24. So then I looked up and it was like edit. So I went through and read it. I just read it plain, used words, spell checker and all that junk to make sure it was okay. And then I kind of went through to try and clean it up again using Grammarly, but then I noticed it was like, get more results from Grammarly Premium. So finally, after I went through it one more time, I was like, all right, let me just pay for a month of Grammarly Premium, breeze through this thing. And there was so much stuff in there that it cleaned it up so much for me in readability that I was like, okay, it actually took me nearly 2 months to do, because every day, I could get through about uh, 5 pages in an hour or something like that with all the recommendations it would have. And I was like, no, I like this better than that, and bounce back and forth. I was like, this could take forever. So then once we got with the actual editor, I had to submit to the editor the manuscript for an evaluation. She gave me the evaluation, and she was honest. She goes, I'll let you know if it's good or if you should stick to writing grocery lists. And I was like, cool, good to know. I want to make sure that, I'm not putting out some trash. So she got back with me, and her words in the email was, you have a beautiful manuscript. And I was like, oh, okay. And we have a lot to work with here. As far as the going on from there, I had about 100, my word count was 127,000 words. Your average memoir is 80 to 90. So we cut a lot of stuff that was just extras that didn't really push the story along. Funny stuff like what happens in Ranger School when you're sleep and food deprived. Dumb stuff like being a private buying a brand new car. So she recommended, and I've just started this too, was taking those stories that didn't make the final cut, putting them into a blog as kind of teasers, to bring people in. So I have a blog on Parade Deck, which I can, share that one later, that I have just started up, since we're at the point where pre-orders are coming soon. But all these stories are just kind of, teasers out there. I'm sharing them on Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever I can, to generate interest. And they're the funnier stories, but they really didn't push the kind of overall narrative of perseverance through struggles along. So anyway, about a year ago is when we started the editing process, and we went with a 6-month editing process, all while I decided to start my college classes at the same time. So I have been, in the last year, I've been tethered to a computer more than I would ever like to be. And I'm so glad that I can start, lengthening out that tether a little bit. But with the editing process, what did we do? Okay, so we did 6 months. And like I said, I thought it was gonna be like, okay, here you go, give me something back. And it was, okay, hey, we're creating chapters. Because initially I only had chapters that matched up with rank promotions. So I started out as like punk private, then, just something that rhymed, seething sergeant, whatever type of thing. And so she broke it down into nice smaller chapters that would be more readable. So we got, I think, 20 or 21 total chapters out of the thing. And so she would check, go through, make some corrections, and then send it back to me and be like, with notes on the side that said, change this, remove this, whatever, what are your thoughts? And at first I was irritated because I was like, this is your job, but the more I got into it, the more I got to rewriting, the better my writing became. So we made these changes, and we added in a lot more dialogue of like conversations instead of just me narrating and telling a story. The bulk of it is still me narrating and telling the story, but there's more people brought into it, and more scenarios and discussions of those things. So that was the big bulk of the 6 months. And most every time I would send something back to her, like I had all those Ranger School stories. There was about 8 or 9 pages of Ranger School stories. It was like, and she even put in there, I know this meant a lot to you and was a big moment in your life and all that stuff, but can you sum it up in about 1 page? And I was like, oh my God, you kidding me, right? And so I sat there, I sat there at the computer, like, how can I'm like, no. It's like, okay, it was a challenge. There was challenges. there's a lot of challenges. We're tired, we're hungry, we're all this and that. So I think I, really encapsulated the bulk of what the Ranger School experience as a whole is in a page and a half. So, about 6 paragraphs. And so those were the challenges I had to overcome with the editing, what to remove, what to keep, and make sure we kept the right things. And even now with reading through the proof, there's been a couple times I'd had to email the publisher back and be like, oh, hey, I got one more change. Oh, hey, I got one more change. Like, oh, hey, reading through, I just remembered this, and this has to be in there, like to make one part way back here or way near the end make sense. I need this, just this like 5 sentences put right here, or even 3 sentences, so yeah, that editing was way more than I expected, all while trying to do some writing classes. So I tried to make sure I was doing 2 classes at a time, that only one was a writing class and one would be something easier in math, because I was always been good at math too, or sciences or something that didn't require as much time behind the computer. But I managed it, and we're here now, and still maintained a 4.0. So we're good to go on that one. I was happy about that. But yeah, that editing was way more involved than I ever expected. But it was good. And one thing she told me was, all good writers feel like their writing is garbage. And I said, well, then I must be a good writer, because I still feel like it's trash. But it's a good story. The flow keeps going and all that stuff. But oh, there was something else with that thought, but I lost it. But yeah, she said, we could write something that's, Nobel Peace Prize worthy or winning and still feel like it wasn't good enough. And I was like, yeah, because that's how I feel right now. Oh, the final thought was, she offered me work as a ghostwriter. So I guess I'm doing good. So yeah.
Would you maybe clarify, because as I heard this for the first time on the editing, it doesn't sound like there's changes. It actually sounds like they give you suggestions to refine the story. And the reason I say that is because there's I just wanted to address the part where people aren't changing your story, right? They're just kind of the editing was more of a refinement of what your story already was, a clarification. Would that be more of a real way to describe editing, that process back and forth?
Absolutely, yeah. You're 100% right. Refinement is a lot better word than changes. They were changes I had to make, but nothing changed in the storyline. And yeah, it was definitely refining it to make it not more palatable, but more better flow. And again, to move out the stuff that, while they were funny stories and good things to tell, to share with people, experiences, all that junk, it was not pushing the story along. So yeah, refinement is definitely a better word to use instead of changes. And then the only thing that really needed to change was, there was some infantry humor in there, that while would I really care that it offended a particular group of people? Not really, but I also didn't want to alienate anybody who may be interested in it, because it's not restricted to just, our experiences. While, again, like I already said once, while they are military, they're not restricted to military, because people have similar struggles, just not the same exact ones. So yeah, those things definitely needed to be pulled out. And I agreed 100% with that. I was like, I wasn't going to be adamant that, something that was commonplace infantry humor, and that's, what it was, would definitely turn some people off, and I didn't want to do that.
There's another just follow up in curiosity, Annette as well, because you guys both right. Does this actually feel like you develop a relationship with with the editor, and because there's so much back and forth, and when that happens, like, is there like a feel of loyalty to that kind of person, and how do you develop, like, what's your next step on that kind of process?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. They're a relationship. The publisher, she said, because I went with a hybrid publishing option. There's a whole nother 20-minute spiel that I won't jump into, that I learned about from the editor too. She was telling me about the different types of publishing out there. But yeah, there's definitely a relationship that develops from it. A knowledge, after a few chapters, I knew what to expect coming. Like, all right, she's going to want more of this. She's going to want more of that. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't. Here's where I'm good at in strengths and may need some help. So, there was a couple of points where I'd make a change and be like, hey, I don't like this very much. What do you think? Can you help me out with something? And I'd get a recommendation too. But yeah, with the hybrid publishing, it's a partnership in business basically at this point. So, they'll do some advertising, I'll do some advertising, and we're sharing. It's in one of my classes, I had to read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I'm probably at like the perfect age to read that because it really resonated with me. If I would have read it in my 20s, I'd been like, this is stupid. But a big theme of that book is synergy. I mean, that's what we're doing right now. Yeah, that's what we're doing. I'll get some awareness and exposure, and you guys get to do the same thing. So we're all just trying to work together in this community to not keep it in this community either, but to share with other people. Like, hey, we're not in these places anymore, but that doesn't mean all the problems went away. It didn't just, we went home, we're good now, everybody's good, everybody's fine. This wasn't a baseball game that ended and we all went home. It left a lot of people in a lot of bad shape, and these are the stories that really need to be shared.
Agreed.
Yeah. I'm excited for your book. You said pre-orders are when?
Should be coming mid-July here, if not by the end of the month, and the book release in August. I want to say it was the beginning of August, but it's starting to look like maybe a little bit of shift. Just probably the busyness of all the editing and final edits and all that stuff too. But yeah, so pre-order should be coming soon with the book out in August sometime.
So you talked a little bit about the editing process, working with your editor, and the reason why you wanted to do this, to leave it for your daughter. But like, what other feelings do you have? Because I when I published my book, there was so many mixed emotions of excitement. I was terrified. I was stressed out. I was like, is anybody going to care? Then I had to stop thinking about that, because it wasn't about, is anybody going to care? I did it for me, for my family, and for my own self-healing journey. Like, I knew I needed to write something so I could try to help other people. So what other emotions are going on right now? Because it's coming quick.
Yeah, there is a little, it's not fear, anxiety. There's some concern for sure. In the subtitle is A Soldier's Memoir. It should be more like a soldier's expose. Because what I kind of tell people is that it reads kind of like a book of the Bible. You get the good, you get the bad. It's not like David. Oh, he was this great, mighty warrior and king. The end. You read all about all the stuff that he did. Good, bad, and in between. And so I put in a lot of good, bad, and in between. So it's concerning to think about the judgment that may come afterward, of some of the stuff that I put in there. But again, at the same time, if I didn't put that in there, it wasn't going to be real. It wasn't going to be raw. And I made it as both of those as I could, to not shy away, because the other part is, I've done a lot of behavioral health, mental health counseling over the years. And those times that we have the most growth is when we walk in there and give them all of it. Because you can walk in and tell them exactly what you want them to hear. And that meets the criteria for what they want to hear. But if you don't go all in, you're not doing yourself any favors, and the healing is only partial anyway. So the concern is, like, what are people's thoughts of me going to be once they learn this, learn these things about me? But I did against kind of not advisement, but against advisement, run a couple tests on it. I shared it with about 15 people from from family who hadn't seen me since I joined the military, family that I was close with, friends that were in the military, friends that weren't, friends that went the whole distance in the military, retired after 20 years, and friends that got out after 4, 6, 8 years. And it was well received by all of them. I got fantastic, not critiques, critiques, criticisms, whatever, the word that I'm looking for won't come to me, but all constructive, that really just helped me go like, okay, all right, so you all were willing to overlook this. Some of you knew some of this, some of you didn't know any of it, but you were all like, receiving it well. So that was another thing where I kind of went forward, and I'm glad I did it. That way I could know, like, hey, ahead of time that it's gonna go okay, and whatever anybody comes, those concerns I have, they're gonna be diminished by, hopefully, at least one person going, hey, I read that story, man, and I was going through the same thing, and I got help, and it didn't make everything great all of a sudden, but I'm on the right path to getting better. And that would be that. I think that right there would just be like, if someone were to come up, I can think about it right now. If someone were to come up to me and say that, I'd be like, that's great, pat him on the shoulder, and have to go take a minute to myself and be like, okay, it was worth it. So yeah. So that's what I'm feeling. Just concerns, yes, but I think the hope of what it could do is outweighing all that. And now, if I'm having anxiousness, it's like, like I said, kind of earlier, was like, I'm ready for this thing to be just in the next phase. Like any concerns or hopes or fears or whatever I have, like, let's find out. Let's get it there and let's find out. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's an emotional toll, right? Because you wrote this thing.
Yeah.
You did it, and you should be really proud of yourself. That's not everybody could do that. And it's going to be amazing. God led you on this path for a reason, and you're going to get it into the right hands. Because I know for me, it's been 5 years now since I wrote the book, but almost 5 years. But even now, when I get that one person who says, I just read your book, and oh my God, I just feel so much like, I don't even have the word for it. You just feel like, okay, I did the right thing, because it just helped them. Even
Right.
5 years later, because you just never know. You never know who's going to pick up that book or when they're going to pick it up. But they're going to pick it up at the time that it was needed. And that right there is just everything.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you. And I think it's kind of the validation that we're looking for. So not like we get validated like we did a good job, but just that validation that it went out there, it did something more, whatever it was. Yep. Is the validation that we're looking for, not in a person's eyes, like, that was a great book, like, okay, great, but that it went out there and, like you said, was what someone needed at just the right time, is just like, okay, it was worth it, that type of validation. Yeah,
absolutely. That's it right there. Where can people find you so they can get notified that you're going to have this pre-order?
So I am on LinkedIn. I don't have any crazy handles. Everything's just Chris Kruger wherever I'm at. So LinkedIn, Facebook would probably even be better, because that's where I first share everything. That's okay. Where and it just seems like searching on Facebook is a little easier than LinkedIn through all the noise that's on there. But anyway, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and then for my blog that I do share on all of those right now. The blog is on Parade Deck, just kind of a military community thing. I'm still getting familiar with it. they do blogs, for all of us with all the things that we're doing here to be able to try and share it with the community there. So the blog is on Parade Deck. Everything is either Chris Kruger or Walking Away from the Ledge, which the statement, the title has come to mean a lot more to me than just like a walking away from a suicide ideation. It's walking away from all of those things that get you to that edge, that ledge. So yeah, but yeah, those are all the places that I can be found, and I'll try to remember to share those links with you later here shortly, especially to the blog. Like I said, those funny stories, they're good teasers, they're good fun reads, they're quick, 5-minute things, and so far anyone who's been clicking on them has been enjoying them, and say keep them coming. So there'll probably be about 20 by the time I got 6 prepared so far, and I think there should be about 20 of them that didn't, like I said, about 35,000 words didn't make the final book. So that's 35,000 words of stories. Yeah.
No, that's good. That's really good. Joe, you have any last thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think you mentioned your wife earlier as part of your team.
Yes.
Right. And so I was just curious, how does that dynamic work? And also, I mean, as a team, you guys seem to be called in your faith to work together, and then also just to help other people. So how has that kind of shaped you guys' relationship as you guys started to work together? I know, look, I'm asking that now as in this era, but I actually have military spouse too. And I know that they've been working with us the entire time.
Right.
But in this endeavor, how has that shaped kind of changes in your relationship and growing that?
It's definitely given us common ground to work with. Even though hers is in the podcasting realm and mine's in the book, they're both media in some shape or form. So it's given us that common ground to work with. The conversations flow around it, to not to the point of where it's just totally consumed by that, but definitely being home and around each other 24/7 now it can have its friction moments, but I think it's helping us to work through those even better. My book and her podcast are very similar in nature. Her podcast is called Hidden Chapters, and I kind of just describe it as people telling those hidden portions of their lives that they have had to persevere and struggle through, which is the heart message of my book there. So, for anyone listening, if you have a story you want to share, definitely her podcast is a great one to dive as deep as you want.
Hidden Chapters. She's on all the platforms, right? Spotify.
Yep, all the platforms. Apple Podcasts is easy. Spotify is easy to find it. And just discovering these new things. Like I hear her voice all the time, but then when I hear it on the pod, I'm like, who is this lady? She sounds just amazing. She has like this perfect voice for it and all that stuff too. And then she hears that. So it just kind of blows me away a little bit, but it's something that has been on her heart for a while to do. And as she just kind of became in between work recently, because when we were getting out, she was like, hey, I want to go back to work. So we were swapping roles. I'm like, hey, that's fine. And, let's do that. Like I'm ready to take a break. And so she did. And once she, kind of resigned from this other job, she was like, hey, I want to lean into this podcasting. I was like, let's just do it. Okay. We're going to do it. But like, if you're going to do it, then do it, like commit to it and let's go. Do you need, what do you need? A laptop? You need this, you need that. So, we tried to make it happen with a iPad Pro and, just a couple things. And she's like, I need more connections, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, sit down and figure out exactly what you need and let's go. And she ran with it, her and Chat GPT figuring this thing out like crazy. So, and then asking anyone and everyone she can. And she's doing her own editing as well at the moment. and she's getting some help from some friends. So just in case they're listening,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not trying to dog on them, but you know, for the most part, she's doing her own editing and all that stuff. But I mean, she ran with it, and that is just, it's amazing. So, and to hear some of the stories that have come out with it, um, I will say, since we're here, I'll just use the moment. Then we are missing some men. So, you know, we've had a couple guys on there, but it's mostly ladies. And I get it, guys. We don't want to sit here and air our dirty laundry to the world or think someone's going to judge us, but give it a shot. You know, share your story, because again, somebody is struggling the same way and wants to hear that they're not the only one, and wants to be encouraged to continue in it when they're thinking about giving up and all that. So yeah, they've really gone hand in hand, and it's just been this kind of there's been a lot more encouragement, you know, when we're feeling like, I don't want to do this, or this isn't working out, or whatever. Um, and you know, challenges that can come with that too. But like I said, I think the friction that has come from being around each other so much, we're learning to work through it a little bit better on the back end of it. So new challenges, new tunnel, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's a huge. That very last thing that you said is something I really want to highlight, because it's true. It's like the more we've dived into these shows, the more we've communicated with people, and all things. And then if they have a partner, and we get to this topic, because I think at least I know Annette and I want to highlight any guest we have and their partner, because that is the one support system that's going to be there. So I like to highlight them. But what I recognize is that they all come to the same kind of idea. Man, this has made some really tough conversations, but you know what? It brings us together. And what's funny is that we've all known that, because every relationship doctor, from way back when, has always said, have the hard conversations. And what do we go?
Right.
Yeah, whatever. Sure. A hard conversation is, hey, you didn't load the dishwasher.
Right.
You don't do the real hard stuff.
You forgot the butter.
Yeah, but I think when you're on a partnership like you guys are working, those hard conversations can come without emotion, because it's not necessarily a hard conversation about something you guys are doing in your relationship. It's about a business, but it translates. And I think, does that help you guys develop better relationship personally, you think?
I think that's what's coming out of it, really. This whole working side by side with something is really helping to develop it a little bit more. You know, even though I mean, we may be side by side, and there's still, you know, a little distance there. You know, it's no longer I'm focused on just this one thing, and she's focused on this other thing, and now we're kind of focused together. So, and yeah, you know, I really think that it kind of helps getting through those challenges and all that too. That maybe there is a little difference where we want to see a better outcome in a point of friction than before, just trying to you know, come out the winner type of thing. Yeah,
totally agree. But you know what's funny? That applies in all. That applies to all relationships.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned synergy, and I actually had to write that down. And I use those words a lot. I use synergy and the source and the universe. But for me, I really believe it's God. Like God pulling us together. Like there's this whole idea of we're all connected in some way, and it's just when the right strings get pulled to bring us together, that's when we accomplish great things. So I already see your book as a success. And Annette and our other partner will tell you, anytime we talk about creating or building or something that's going to advance a community or something, I always already know it's done. We're just catching up to it. So your book is already done. It's a success. All we're going to do is catch up to it. And I'm looking forward to that catch up. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That just give me a couple tingles there, make me feel good about it too. So, you know, I just just trying to do what I can do on my end to make sure that I'm actively participating while waiting. I think it was a
Yeah.
kind of a message that we've heard recently. So just like, okay, what else can I do without turning into a workaholic about the whole thing? Because that's not part of my nature. That's not who I'm going to become. Like, you know, my phone's not ringing at the end of the night. People calling about aircraft maintenance or something like that. I'm grateful. I am so grateful that once I moved on, the phone stopped ringing. But like, okay, between these particular hours of, at least 9 in the morning and 3 to 4 in the afternoon, like what work can I get done, without neglecting my family too, especially on summer break. So that's been the tough one too. I'm like, sorry girls, I got a lot of work to do and so does mommy, but we'll get out and still do some fun stuff. So yeah.
It's hard. Work-life balance is so hard, especially when you have something big coming out. You want to do what you can to help share that and not like neglect everything else. But like Joe said, I mean, it's done. You did it. You've accomplished one of the hardest things that somebody can do. And it's just going to be great. I just saw your cover on Parade Deck, and that's a powerful cover. So great job, Chris. Honestly, it's not easy.
Thank you. Yeah, that cover, we loved it. That came from the publisher. It happened to be the publisher was also a graphic designer for one of the major publishing brands out there before she went and opened her own. And she gave me about 8 or 10 to choose from. And both Jenny and I were like, we love it. And anyone who's seen it is like, that's awesome. I'm like, okay, great. Thank you. It's like, just yeah. If someone comes out and says they hate it, I'm like, cool, you're the first. So I don't even care about you.
No, like it's fine. You know what? Like it's fine. You cannot please everybody. You're never going to be able to please everybody. Exactly. This is for you and you did it. So I'm really proud of you. I'm excited for you. And thank you and Genevieve for everything that you do for the community. It was such a great conversation today, and I'm so glad that you were able to be on here. And I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you. And I did give you a shout out in the acknowledgement section because this may have happened without you, but you helped us get started in the process, directing us toward an editor. So I had to give, it's a quick 2 or 3 sentences, but yeah, absolutely.
That's, oh my gosh. Thank you.
You know what I talk about? What I was saying earlier? How is the juice worth the squeeze? This is one of those opportunities, and that's
absolutely.
I just wanted to help. And
and that's where I'm at too. I want to help. Someone like I said, someone else has got a struggle like that, and I'm saying, it's not going to be great. All right. It's not going to be great. I'm not going to promise. I'll look right in the camera. It's not going to be great, but it'll be okay. I just walk away from that ledge. It's tough, but what in life isn't,
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, so.
Okay. So I can't wait to find out how I can get an autograph book from you. And
I'm working on those details. I've got plenty of people hit me up. I'm like, I'm trying to get those details.
I know. I know. Well, thank you again. I will share all your links to your social media and to your blog in the show notes when this is all completed. So everyone, thank you for tuning in, for listening, for watching on YouTube. The final version, the edited version, will be on Spotify and iHeartRadio and all the good places, everywhere you stream. So thank you again for being here. Keep following us along at veteranlifestylemagazine.com. Check out our new website because we worked really hard on it, and all the social media channels. So until next time, thanks again, Chris. Thanks again, Joe. We will see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
So when I met Ryan Hunt and Annette Wittenberger, they kept talking about this amazing idea that they had and had previously been successful at, but it had been paused and they wanted to keep going with it. And they were talking about how veterans can learn resources about entrepreneurship, education, really connecting with our fellow veteran community and being successful. So obviously I wanted to be a part of that. And I am really excited to be a part of 2025 because we are going to have even more amazing speakers and resources